Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trauma Uncensored. I'm your host, Brooke Shearer. We've got another great episode for you today, which we will jump into shortly. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, thank you for your continued support. And if this is your first time listening, I'm so glad you found us. This podcast was created as a safe space for community, connection, resources, and support for anyone navigating trauma, grief, mental health, or pain. Here, your experiences are both valid and valued. Your story matters, and it's important to know you are not walking this path alone. It is my hope that each episode helps you feel more connected and reminds you that it is possible to not only live, but to truly thrive after hardship. Trauma Uncensored began as an extension of my own healing journey following immense trauma. The course of my life changed in the fall of 2015 and led to the tragic death of our 9-year-old son, Logan, in 2016 due to a distracted driver whose reckless choice behind the wheel led to the crash. In the time since Logan was taken from us, I have fought for my mental health and for my survival. That fight has led me down an unexpected path of discovery, healing, and recovery. It has given me the tools to sit here today and share these conversations with you. If you're new to the Trauma Uncensored podcast, I invite you to start with episode 1 titled The Crash. In that episode, I share the beginning of my story, which provides important context for the conversations and guest stories that follow. Speaking of guests, we believe our listeners' voices matter deeply, and we welcome those who wish to share their experiences. If interested, click on the submission link in our show notes below, email hello@traumauncensored.com, or reach out through any of our social platforms. Just be sure to include the word guest in your submission. All show information, resources, and links can also be found in the show notes. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if this podcast speaks to you, and I'm sure it will, we would truly appreciate you leaving a review. Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This podcast discusses topics related to grief, loss, trauma, mental health challenges, survival, and more. While I have gained deep personal experience in these areas, I am not a therapist, and this show is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So stay tuned for another installment of Trauma Uncensored, where, as always, we're healing out loud.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Andres, bestie.
Yes, we're here.
Hi. I'm
did
so
it.
happy. I'm so happy to see you again. I've missed you.
It's good. It's good to come. It feels kind of like when you come back to your old alma mater in college or something. You're like, oh my God, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I mean,
missed,
it's...
Rhea just woke up. There she is.
Oh, did she?
Mhm.
Do you need to get...
Could you
do
hear her?
need to-
No, Bree's got her. Did you?
No.
I was hoping for old time's sake that Bree would bring me a cup of coffee as we were doing this.
It's...
But I already had my cup of coffee because I had meetings earlier.
So it's so funny you should say that. Since I was mistaken and thought that our recording was an hour earlier than it actually was, I have just gotten into, well, here's my little Logan cup. Isn't it great? I got that in, oh wait, no, that
I
says
love it.
M&M's. No, this says Logan. There's Logan.
There we go.
I had it on display for a while and I was like, fuck that. Why am I not drinking out of this?
It's a great mug.
I got that when we were in New York City for his 18th birthday. We went to the M&M store, which is where we took him during that last trip and of his life. And so it's very memorable. But I was thinking today, so
One of her
I've started.
Did you see this?
Who's that? No.
One of our friends gifted us mugs with our faces on them.
Oh, that's
That's
very
Bree.
nice. That's, oh, I was going to say, is that you?
No, this is me. Look at this.
Nice. I love it. Mugs. If only everybody understood our affinity to mugs.
It's great.
But so I started actually using my Nespresso machine as it's meant to be used. So I've started making lattes. And so in that hour that I was sitting around, I was working, but I was sitting around waiting for this recording to start. I've had a lot of lattes. So this could be a really fun episode because I
I'm
am
hoping so.
jacked on caffeine. So
I'm
I thought
hoping
I'd
so.
mention that since you brought up, the brie and coffee thing, because I thought you'd be proud of me. I'm starting. I've joined
Good.
that world
Welcome
of
to the clan.
of
You're
lattes.
becoming the most amazing podcaster of all time.
Because of the lattes.
It's all these little things that.
Oh
are
my
adding up.
gosh. Well, we could just talk about all the things
Hey.
that I'm doing for this podcast now, which has just blown up and it just blows my mind. But I tell you what, I spend a lot of time sitting in this chair in my office now. I do. There's just, it's a good thing I go to see Danielle. Hi, Danielle. It's
I
a
was
good
gonna
thing.
say everything goes back to Danielle. Hi, Danielle.
It does. She's well, okay. So, here we go. Everything goes back to Danielle. And as people may not know, Danielle actually introduced us. And for those of you who don't know Danielle, Danielle is my trainer. I go to see her on a good week 4 times now. I've allowed myself to condense to 4 and make it work, make it happen, make it beneficial. But Danielle's the one that introduced us, and Andreas is my producer and helped me start the podcast and help me get here today to being the actual main host, which was the goal all along. And I am so grateful for his help in getting me to that point. And Andreas has become a very dear friend, a very, very dear friend. And I have been so welcoming in sitting alongside this friend who has had a lifetime of trauma, and hearing all of his stories really has humbled me, because sitting across from me is this man who is so positive and looks at his experiences in such amazing ways, shows the amount of growth he has allowed himself for those experiences. I mean, all of these, everything in which we're going to talk about today could have easily torn him down from the get-go. I mean, Andreas could be someone who, is living a typical, trauma-afflicted life, and he's not. He chooses to look at things through a lens of, but why not me? And yes, this happened to me, and I am responsible for continuing to live my life in a joyful, happy, purposeful way. Purposeful?
That makes sense. I think that's there.
Purposeful? Yeah. Okay. So
I agree.
So Andreas, I know of the 3 major areas of your life that have been extremely traumatic to you. But can you, and we've talked about it throughout some of the episodes, where you and I were together.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to officially and formally share those experiences with the audience in whatever chronological order or order of importance, or however you feel. Please tell us about your trauma.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say I'm very proud of you for
thanks.
what you're doing. And again, I am thankful to Danielle because she's just great. What a beautiful human being, inside and out.
Love you, Danielle.
She's just great. And just so easy to get along with. I mean, I hung out with her when I was in Nashville. She's just a fun person to just be the energy. And she became a person when she said, "Hey, you got to call this lady. I think this is someone that you'd be interested in talking to about a podcast." I remember just thinking, okay, let's see what's going on. And my philosophy with all this stuff is that people don't owe you their story. Anytime someone tells you their story, it's a gift, and it's worth being honored, no matter how different it is from yours or how similar it is from yours. And all that to say, I kind of had forgotten some of that. And then I met you, and then you told me about Logan, and it really brought me back down to earth as far as like the importance of having someone share their story and have them tell what they have to say. Because we are so caught up in our own world and our own shit that like someone's trauma comes up, or even if it's not traumatic, someone's, challenges in their life come up, and we tend to just bury our heads because we have enough stress in our life as it is, that we stop to figure out and look up and say, hey, this is a gift that someone's giving me. And I'm so thankful that they're doing that. So when you told me that, I was very thankful. And when we started working together, it was from the beginning. I was like, someday you're going to do this on your own.
Yeah.
And I could see that moment was coming the more and more we started working on the show. But all this, I'm just saying all of this because I wanted to really express that now I'm listening to some of these episodes that you're popping out in the last week since we've been just doing the show with just you, and man, you're a natural. You're doing it so good.
You.
Yeah, you're crushing it. And I think people tell you that on the air, maybe, or maybe off the air.
Mm-hmm.
But from a person who saw it from the beginning, I can tell you're just doing really, 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 really good. And what you're doing is important. It's not just maybe one thing if you're out here talking about baseball or something. You're good at doing that. You're good at
I couldn't talk about baseball, actually.
But what you're doing as far as the importance of having people talk about what was traumatic for them and what they've done to survive is such an important piece of work. And you're not approaching it as a therapist where, you're talking to them about all these scientific terms. Sometimes they come up, but you're just saying, hey, talk. This is your life. Mm-hmm. Share with us, and it's valuable. So I just wanted to say praise to you for that because
thank you.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
I
as appreciate that, by the way.
Yeah,
you've been a good mentor. You've been a good mentor.
I'm glad that I've been helpful. I aim to be that way for sure. One of my philosophies is leave people better than you found them.
Yeah, I love
so
it.
I'm hoping that's the case by the time it's all said and done. Okay, so as far as traumatic events, well. Yeah, my life's just full of them. I think earlier when you were saying that I just choose to look at things with joy and good perspective, I think it's just kind of the default way that it had been since the beginning. A lot of it had to do with my parenting. My folks are both people who, this is how my mom frowns. She just smiles, right?
Is that the same was that the same frown she gave you when she fed you and your brothers and father dog food for your wedding? Mm-hmm.
Talk about traumatic. No, that wasn't that traumatic, but that was funny as hell.
I don't know. We could add that to a fourth trauma.
My mom fed me dog food on my wedding day. That's just more of a funny story.
Mm-hmm.
Honest mistake, I think. Oh, Sandra. No, but really, like, just my parents just have always been people who were hard workers, who were people who were positive, and it was just nurtured into me. I guess I don't know how long we want to make this episode, or if we're going to make it long and then split it into two, or if we're just going to record twice.
You just keep talking.
So I'll just go into the details, and then we'll see where we end up.
Okay.
So I guess the first traumatic event in my life was when I died. And again, this is the story I'd like to tell the least because people have challenged me the most in the past about it. And it gets to a point
challenged. Let me say more about that. Challenged you how?
Because according to the medical team that operated me when I had heart surgery when I was 6 years old, I had complications with the surgery, and there was a point where there was, and again, I say this based on what the doctor told my mom, who then told me. So this is already a game of telephone. But apparently, I was pronounced dead while I was on the table because my heart just stopped beating. It's complicated surgery back then. It isn't now. Now they can do it through the hip, and you can be out of the hospital the same day. But back in the 90s in South America, in Colombia, it was we have to cut you open in the chest. We have to get into your heart. We got to patch some holes up, and we had to come back out. The details of that aren't important. It was just more the age and the memory of being in the hospital and the explanation of how things were doing. Now, one thing that has been true in my life is my parents, and this is a theme that comes up both in my book and as I always told this story on stage, because I used to do motivational talks about this, is that my parents never lied to my brother and I. As we were growing up, they found ways of softening the blow of the truth, but they always were honest with what was happening and what could be possible, good or bad. Good parenting, bad parenting. To me, it was great. It worked because I understood very well what was happening and what we were going to do about it. And I think that's a mentality that helps you a lot when you experience traumatic events, because it isn't necessarily what happens to you, but how you choose to react to it. And that's something that is, old cliche, but it's a cliche because it's the truth. It's really like things are going to happen to you. So, it's okay. There's people listening to this that are going to listen to some of the things I'm saying and they're going, yeah, well, that happened to me too. And it's like, great, but how come this person's life turned out different than this person's life? And the difference was the choices that they made based on how they chose to look at the situation as it was happening or after it had. And so anyway, so all that to say, when I was found out that I needed to get heart surgery, like my mom and dad sat down with me and said, hey, look, here's what's going to happen. It turns out that there's something in your heart that isn't working well. And the doctors need to go in there. They need to open you up and they need to fix it. And then after it's fixed, it's going to be painful as you heal. But that's okay because we're here with you. And the important thing is that we're together, So it wasn't like they were saying, we're going to cut you open, you're going to bleed. Like they weren't being graphic about it. They were just honest. And that was an important moment in my life because I was old enough to remember being alone in a hospital. I was old enough to remember hating how cold hospitals were. I remember there was a girl in the waiting room, or the night before I was hospitalized the night before the surgery, and there was a little girl that was sharing the room with me, and she was in for her third surgery of the same kind, and she was trying to walk me through how to not be scared about it, and she didn't make it. And so there was things that were scary about it. And that alone was super traumatic as a kid because you're like, holy cow, I might die.
Well, when you say she didn't make it, were you aware of that before your surgery?
Yeah, because we had met her parents. So I went in, my surgery was on a Wednesday and we actually went in on a Monday, and we had been in there, and because she was in the same room as me, my parents had talked to her parents. And so we found out that the third time was not the charm for her.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, but it's little things like that where it's like I think more of my parents, especially now after my kid was in the hospital, which we'll get to that, but like it must have been so scary for them going, holy shit.
Oh, for sure.
What?
Sure.
And I don't have to tell you of all people what it's like to lose a kid, and so for them, that fear was so real, and it was impossible not to see it in their faces. It was impossible to not like when your family, distant family, like second cousins come to see you at the hospital before the surgery, it's a clear sign that there's danger ahead. It's right. Your cousin from Barranquilla or Medellin doesn't come up to Bogota to just be like, hey man, I haven't seen you
when they're reading you your last rites before
yeah.
you go into surgery.
You don't even see each other at Christmas,
but here you are.
But here you are. So so it's little things like that. The surgery happened. There was complications. Again, that's the part where that gets more challenged because people are like, did you see anything? Did you go somewhere? And then I tell them what I remember experiencing during the time I was out and supposedly, according to the doctors, not alive. And I tell people what I remember. And then that's when I get challenged to answer your question. Is like, that's not what happens when you die. I'm like, oh, man, like this is not theological or a debate about what heaven is or isn't. Maybe I was in hell. Who knows? But, so I always kind of shy away from that part of the story. Because
but I want to hear it. Oh, no, I do. I actually want to hear it.
I mean,
how about the cliff notes? Because here's the thing. We talk a lot on this podcast about a variety of different beliefs and experiences. And, there's a fine line up until very recently that I've been not wanting to cross, because there are going to be people, there are people who believe in this and but remember, we're uncensored. And when Marla came on a couple weeks ago, or when Marla was on a couple weeks ago, Marla and I are very aligned in the belief of spirituality, right? And I'm going to throw it out there, and people may not like it. People may unfollow me. People may not listen. It is what it is. I don't subscribe to an organized religion. I have belief. I have faith in a creator. I actually believe that everybody believes in the same thing. It's just there are certain twists that are put onto it. What helps me get through the beliefs that I have are that we are all spiritual beings having an existence, having a experience here on earth.
Yeah.
I don't believe in the black and white. I believe there's so many shades of gray in between. That gives me the ability to be non-judgmental with other people and their beliefs. Like the only time I have an issue is if someone is being disrespectful, is, telling me what I should or shouldn't believe, that what I believe is wrong. I am an open dialogue, and I welcome open dialogue about experiences and beliefs, because I believe we all have the right to believe what we want to believe. It's just when people start doing what you're saying and they start telling you, excuse me, they start telling you, absolutely no, that is not wrong, or that is wrong, that did not happen.
You're a liar.
Et cetera,
That's not what
et cetera.
happens. You're just lying.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
I don't
so,
know, man. I'm just telling you what I know.
Exactly. So I know there's a lot of trauma in your story that we need to talk about and will talk about. And let's set a platform right here that it is a welcome, open space for people to talk about their beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Without fear of what other people are going to think. And I would like for you, if you're comfortable with it, and if not, feel free to tell me to piss off. But if you're comfortable with it, I would love to hear. And I don't think I'm going to be the only one, but I would love to hear that experience, because as someone who has lost a child, someone who believes in that connection with my son, that we don't lose people, that they are energy. They're just across a very thin veil that we can't see. We can see if we choose to see. I choose to see and connect. I choose to believe that this is not the end all be all. I choose to believe there are things out there so much more profound than what a lot of Westerners, I'm going to use the word Westerners. It's not solely limited to Westerners, but I do believe Westerners are the ones that kind of say, no, this is not okay, and et cetera, et cetera.
That's fair.
So if you're open to setting the groundwork for
I'll tell you what
forward.
I'll tell you what I tell people now, because it's the two most vivid memories that I can for sure remember having of this happened to me, and there's nobody that's going to convince me that it didn't. The other ones I'm like, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe I was just on drugs or some shit like that. Like, I don't know. But I will tell you this. Well, first of all, piss off. No, imagine if I told you to piss off. I almost said it with a straight face.
Yeah, try. Good luck with that.
No, okay, I'll tell you two things that are like very vivid that I can confidently say wherever I was or however I was, this happened and it was not a dream. I'll do that. How about that? Because the other stuff, it could have been a dream, and I can't confidently say that, and I don't want to just put stuff out there that wouldn't make sense to
That's fair.
me. Okay. 1, I was not a child. There was a moment during that where I remember thinking, I don't know how old I was, which leads me to the second point in a second, but I don't know. I know for a fact, like the way you know you're not a child now, but you remember being a kid, I felt exactly like I feel now, where it's like, I've lived a life and I am no longer. Because when you're a little kid, there's a moment where you don't know you're a little kid, then you realize you're a little kid, and then you want to be an adult. And then I was in that phase where I'm like, I enjoy being a little kid. This is great. That's where I was in my life when that happened. And so I remember not very distinctly, like as much as I know it now to my bones, I am no longer a child. I knew it then. And then the second thing was there was no collection of time. Without looking at the timer right now, or for people who are listening, if you're listening at double speed or you're listening to us at regular speed, you can ballpark how long you've been listening to this episode. Like if I can tell the timer, I can see, but it feels like it's been about 20 to 25 minutes, 30 minutes, right? And yeah, timers right now, at least on our side as we're recording, says 21 minutes, right? That feels right. if I told you we've been talking for 4 hours, you'd be like, no way. And we definitely haven't been talking for 3 minutes. There's some sort of like time movement that we have subconsciously, put in our brains that we're aware of. You might not know the exact timer, but you know what it is and what it isn't, right? That did not exist at all. And it's hard to explain that to people because it's like trying to explain the color red without saying the word red. And you can't really hit it, right? It's like strawberries, cherries. You can kind of like paint around it, but you can't really nail what that feels like when you have no time recollection at all. If you said to me wherever I was there for an eternity, for 10 minutes, for 12 hours, the entire length of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, all of those things could be entirely accurate. I have no idea. And I didn't even know how to even know is the best way I can describe it. That's my cherry strawberry description because I don't know how to. I've never felt anything like that since, and I don't think I ever will again until I'm dead again. But I just remember that now. Feeling wise, I can tell you what it felt like, and people. This is when I get so challenged. It didn't feel peaceful. People think like, it wasn't peaceful, but it wasn't stressful. It wasn't like regular emotions that you feel didn't exist. Like it didn't feel like anything. I'm not saying it didn't feel like. I'm not saying it felt like nothing. That's not what I'm saying. It just didn't feel like anything I've felt before or since that day.
That's interesting. Right? I mean,
I didn't have
emotions. Are emotions just a human condition?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so because I think we're designed to feel them to understand how to survive. But I don't. They're just information. But you don't need information wherever the hell I was. I didn't need to know those things. I think I was beyond those things, and I have no words in both the languages I know to tell you how it felt because I didn't feel. It's just hard to explain because I didn't feel it. You know what I'm saying? I just knew it. In the same way that I knew that I was older, I knew things about my life that I can't tell you what I know. Like this is why people get so frustrated because they want to know more. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Also, I was 6, so I don't even know if I knew the words to describe it then. That maybe I've learned how to describe them now, but I can't make the connection because it was a different realm of existence. Yeah, that's the best way I can say it.
I'm totally interested, and I have been since Logan passed about all of that. I mean, I've met people who, talk about their experiences, their near-death experiences. And, it's interesting because, when we were in the crash and when we were hit, I don't know how long, I can't testify to how long I was out. I have no concept of how long I was out.
Yeah, it's like that.
And that was the thing is, and that was a huge thing during the trial, a huge thing, but that's neither here nor there in terms of the experience that I had. All of these years since, or all of the years since, not all of the years because I kind of got my answer, but for about the next, 7 years, not quite 7 years, I was so angry. I guess it was 6 years. I was so angry that all of these people, these other parents who had lost children, who had been in a situation like ours, had lost time here, had, blacked out, had done whatever, had these near-death experiences. And a lot of these parents were able to see their children on the other side, right? And everything for me was black. And I was so pissed off. I was so mad that I didn't get the opportunity to at least remember my interaction, on that other side until, before I woke up. And it wasn't until I was in residential trauma the first time. And, something about going to res trauma that is so powerful is that if done correctly, you don't have access to the world. You go and you're there and you don't have your cell phone and you can't really communicate with the outside world and you're just immersed in this work, right? You don't have to go to work. You don't have to parent. You don't have to do any of these things. You get to shut all of that out, which allows you to, if you so choose it, right? Again, this is choice. You have to choose it. But it allows you to recenter and really open up in ways that there's too much noise in the outside world for you to be able to do. So it was Logan's angel date in 2022, and I was at residential trauma for that, and I had a sound bath with a dear woman who's amazing at what she does. Her name's Marie Bass. I'm sorry, not Marie Bass. That's Kat Bass, my friend. Marie Turley. I mean, go figure, right? I get people mixed up. But we were having, she was performing a sound bath for me with all these beautiful bowls. And I had learned while I was there that I could fall into a really deep meditative state through a sound bath with her. So, I mean, wonderful for healing. But I remember that day, I was in that sound bath, and she wanted to, we went over in time, but she wanted to take me through the time where Logan died. So I was in there time stamped at the time of Logan's death 6 years prior.
Whoa,
And
shit.
yep, she was like, she's like, I know we're over time. Let's keep going. And, we did. And I ended up so deep into this meditation that I swear to you, I saw what happened in that in-between moment between the crash and waking up. And I remember hugging Logan, and I was bawling both there and as I was in this meditation. I remember bawling, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I remember telling Logan, I love you and I can't stay. I love you and I can't stay. And when I came out of this meditation, like, I got that final hug, right? I got to see that final, and it's not a final. I don't believe it's final.
You got to say goodbye for now.
For now,
Which
exactly.
you'd been denied that.
Exactly.
At the beginning. Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember waking up and asking Marie, who the fuck would ever want to come back to this place? Who would ever? Yeah. And I said that's verbatim. Who the fuck would ever want to come back? And, fast forward 4 years later, not quite 3.5 years later. And I'm so glad that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been hell getting to that point.
Yeah.
But being able to see that moment, I think, was an amazing shift into part of that healing process that has pushed me forward. You know, so I mean,
you need those moments. You
need
those moments,
you do.
For sure.
I do. And I fully believe in your experience. And who are we to question?
Yeah.
Who are we to question?
I don't. Oh,
Rio.
You hear her now?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Again, this is when people have challenged me historically the most in my life is just like, but did you get? I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't know how to tell you more than what I just said. Like, those are all the words that I know. Call me stupid. I don't care, but I don't have any more to say than that's what happened, and then that's it.
Yeah.
The next thing I remember is I wake up with a pain down my chest as if someone was using a branding iron to like brand me, and it's just this burning sensation down my chest, and it's just a scar. It's me coming to back rebooting again, and I wake up and I look down. My mouth is so dry that I can't scream in pain. I'm just like croaking, and I look down, and there's a tube coming out of my stomach and hooked up to some machine somewhere, and my left arm has the IV and a bunch of different other. It's got like a little cast on it. My IV was on my right side, and then my left arm has like it looked kind of like a cast, and it had different needles going into my arms. I had 2 tubes in my neck that went directly to my heart in case it stopped. They I guess shocked it back if it ever had any complications, or so I was told. There was for like 10 years I had you could see where they had been, and then I felt the searing pain of the scar that was now going to be permanent on my chest. And my mom was there, and she saw it, and she looked at me, and she was horrified. I mean, I could see her looking at me as if I had been through hell and back. And she's like, I don't know what to give you. I don't know what to give you. And she had a Coke bottle and she filled a cap full of it. And she just like gave me some because she was like desperate. The nurses weren't there. And I swallowed it and I finally was like, and I got my esophagus and my trachea were now able to make noise. And so I just screamed. And then as the Coke settled, which you're not supposed to drink sugar and Coke when you're on medication. And so immediately I was like, uh-oh. And then I just threw up, and the expansion of my chest cavity when you throw up. I mean, it was, I don't know, the pain. I've never felt pain like that since in my life, physically at least. And it was brutal. I mean, I remember this so vividly. It took a long time probably not that long, but it felt like it took 5 years for the freaking nurses to come in and like medicate me again to like manage to tolerate the pain. But I was awake, and then slowly all my family members that had been there started coming back and like saying hi to me and like, you did it, you survived or whatever. And
you can go home now.
Yeah. But because there had been complications, I had to stay at the hospital like an extra week and a half than what was originally scheduled. And then what happened that was like the first half of it. This is the first time I've told this in as much detail since I wrote my book, so this is interesting. But
you wrote a book?
Yeah, I'm assuming the intro is going to have that on there, so I usually do not mention it unless someone else mentions it because I do not like talking about the fact that I wrote a book.
Why? I know that you wrote a book.
But it's so pretentious to be like,
oh no,
I'm an author.
No, it's not.
It's back there. There's I'm subtle as I can be unless I'm asked, but I'm assuming the bio would have had that I'm an author. So there you go. It's called The Cost of Citizenship, but you can skip chapter 2 because this is it right here. So anyway, yeah. The next thing that happened is I spent extra time in the hospital, and I walked around the PICU talking to kids who are about to go into surgery and telling them that it was going to be okay.
I love this.
My mom has very clear videos and memories of me just walking up to a kid and be like, hey, what's your name? Okay, Alejandro. Okay, my name's Andres, and you're gonna look at me. I'm okay. And I would just encourage kids as they were about to go in. I did that every day. I would make rounds until I left. The healing process was probably worse somehow. Showering became a pain in the ass. This is for this reason that I still, and people like, this is where like the trauma shows up later in your life as an adult. To this day, I hate throwing up. I mean, if I can avoid puking, I will avoid puking. I hate throwing up. I hate being wet. I don't like pools. I don't like, no, do I go to pools? Yes. Do I go to the ocean? Yes. Do I get into hot tubs? Yes. But if I can avoid being wet, I do not like being wet because every time I had to go shower, I had to like clean my scar. And if the water was just too hot or just too cold, it hurt. It hurts to, like, think about it. When you have a scab, when you scrape your knee or something, and then you're taking a warm bath and you forget that you have that scab, it burns your knee. You know what I'm talking about? It was that for months and months and months after. So anytime I had to clean myself, anytime I had to like get wet, I hated it. I also had to do therapy for it. There was a tube, breathing tubes and stuff that I needed to blow into to improve, to get better. Multiple visits to a hospital that I hated going to, a place that I didn't want to ever go back to again, but you'd have to go back because they have to check up on you. I hated just the idea of seeing doctors in general, whether it was at the same hospital or outside of it. And then Christmas of 98 came. So this all happened November of 98. And then the month later, Christmas of 98 came when they needed to remove the stitches. And that was the worst day of my life up until my daughter was born, which also was the best day of my life. So it was just a net negative that day.
Were the stitches, were they, like fabric stitches?
Yeah, they didn't dissolve. They were third world countries, so they had no pain regulation. They just in front of me, I watched them with my shirt off, look down, grab some tweezers, and just pull out stitches. In my life, I remember moments of just pure rage this was one. I mean, it so much pain, so much so that they couldn't finish it. And there's X-rays. I have them somewhere actually, of when I was 13, they took X-rays of my chest once I had moved to the United States to kind of like get caught up on what happened to me, and you could still see the stitches in there in my chest still. They're still in there because I couldn't handle the pain all the way through.
So skin just grew over him, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was traumatic experience number uno.
Well, and before we move on to trauma experience number 2, you bring up a lot of good points, and I'm glad you actually brought them up, because, and I had it down here to ask you about, a lot of people, I don't think, understand their connection to trauma that exists in terms of a health-related incident like that, and how it can lead to health-related trauma. You have mentioned, you mentioned not wanting to go back to the hospital. You've mentioned not wanting to shower or be wet. You've mentioned, remind me, what was the first thing you mentioned? You said you don't like to.
I don't like being wet. I don't like going to the pool or anything like that. I don't like going to hospitals.
Yes. And I mean, just all of that. And, I never understood. So part of my OCD, and this is, related to health trauma, although for me, the OCD would create this really unhealthy cycle around it. But mine was debilitating. And I never understood that connection until I was educated, until someone pointed out to me, your main OCD issue is health-related trauma, or health-related, health anxiety. And I get curious around how many people have things happen as such. Something happen. One thing could happen, or it could happen in a traumatic way that creates this safety mechanism, probably an unhealthy safety mechanism as well, that allows us to go about situations with fear, right? Address situations with fear.
Yeah.
And that is something that is born, that is a trauma. That is a trauma for you. What happened when you were a child, right?
Yeah.
And do you have issues going to the doctor now, or have you?
Yeah. Because nothing good happens when you go to the hospital. Even the only good thing that happens as a result of you needed to go. When someone says I need to go to the hospital, it's not a good thing other than childbirth. And even then, as I will tell you later, it's still that was not the best experience of my life. And so. And she's right over there. I'm so sorry.
Right. That's okay.
I
love Rio. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
She has a permanent pass.
I do too. But it's just one of those things where it's I don't like if someone says I'm going to the hospital. If I called you right now, say we're not recording. We're just in life, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to the hospital. That's never good. If you know that my wife is not pregnant, that's not a good thing. Automatically. And when you've experienced why that's not a good thing, and again, because another thing about my trauma is that, and I guess to an extent, most of our traumas is you're not alone. I mean, I'm not the only. There's people who have had heart surgery listening to this, going, "Yep," right? As you will find out as with some of my other stuff, but as, I don't. Yeah. So to your point of all that is just why are we excited to go to the hospital? Why would I ever be excited to go to the hospital, given that every time I've gone to the hospital is either because I almost died, my mom has been sick, my kid was in the NICU.
Well, and you can liken it to, and this might be a little bit more relatable for people listening. So, does it trickle down, and I'll get to the analogy here in just a second, but does it trickle down further than just the hospital? does it trickle down to going to see doctors in general, or is that something that didn't affect you nearly as much?
It was always painful. So like, I guess for a normal person, and I'm saying normal as if any of us are, but for general people who've never had major heart surgery or major surgery at a hospital, it's still always painful. Even as you're a kid, you go to the doctor to get shots and those hurt. When you go to the doctor, you go to the dentist, it hurts. Everything, when you leave the doctor after seeing the doctor, even after an eye exam, you're like, my eyes hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's never like, I went there and man, I've never felt that much pleasure. It's not like it's not a strip club. I'm just saying. Sorry, the comedian in me had to.
I'm so glad you're back.
The comedian in me had to.
Well,
I'm just saying, like, it's because of that. That's just bare standard normal. That's most kids. Like,
so
I think of your kid, and she's like, the last time she was in a hospital it was a nasty, like, physical harm.
Right.
Right. And also, her brother died that day. Like, there's so much attached. So if you're a person that has gone to a hospital beyond the regular things, it's even like all your worst fears have come to life.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't like them. I don't like them either.
I hate them, and they're always cold.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in the ER in April of last year, that was the first time I'd been in a hospital since the crash. But so for people I believe have experiences, I don't believe, I know, because I was one of them, have experiences where a certain situation will cause serious distress or undue distress and you can't put your finger on it, right? So what I'm trying to lead to with your hospital example, it's kind of like, and I'll use mine, being in a tragic car crash, or it may not even be tragic. It may just be enough that it scared the motherfucking shit out of you, right?
Yeah.
And then, so people would go, okay, well, sure, it makes sense that, I don't want to get in a car again. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's an easily understood. So you had this surgery. It was extremely traumatic. You don't want to go to the hospital, right? And, but then there are times where, say, we'll go back to the car analogy. I was involved in this car crash. I have trauma from this car crash. I'm riding with a friend. I mean, we're just, we're going out. I was like, hey, let's go out at night on the town. And you know what? My friend says, hey, I'm going to be the DD. And I'm like, yeah, please do. I get in the car. My anxiety goes through the roof. And I'm like, but wait a minute. I'm here with a friend and we're going to do something fun. Well, what is going on? And, or simply just the fact of thinking of being a passenger, and you start to freak out and you're like, you can feel your body activate. You can feel your nervous system.
Because there's been times before where this didn't end well for you. Getting in the car.
And most people are not aware enough to understand that connection. Mm-hmm. So by having this conversation and bringing this to the surface, there and car crashes or car accidents or car incidents and hospital incidents, those are just two things out of a wide range of trauma-inducing occurrences that could cause the nervous system to dysregulate. It could be a sound that could dysregulate you. It could be a thought. It could be a smell. Yeah. So it doesn't have to just be going from like hospital in trauma to hospital, today, or car crash to getting in and driving behind a car.
It's getting wet. It's taking a shower. Yep. It's every time, because I have a scar that's permanent. Like, I'm taking a shower and I look down and I'm like, man, I remember when this used to hurt, but it's not a good feeling. Mm-hmm. And you can do all the therapy and all that stuff for it, and it will help. And therapy is just so you can live with it. It's not so it can go away, but it doesn't go away.
I'm actually going to challenge that. So you've heard of EMDR? We've talked about EMDR, right? Mm-hmm. So for those of you who, and remember, I am not a licensed therapist. I don't have a license to practice EMDR. I have just done a tremendous amount of it. And what I can tell you is that EMDR can be, if you allow it to be, so powerful that it can actually remove the dysregulation surrounding an event like that.
Yeah.
To where you can approach it and move forward, right?
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
done EMDR around my health anxiety, which, let me tell you, for example, my health anxiety was once so bad that I allowed, and I think we may have talked about this before, but I allowed a functional medicine doctor to prescribe me over 80 supplements a day. He had me taking over 80 supplements a day. And I look back on that now and I'm like, that had to have been killing my liver. And I was doing some really unhealthy things that I thought were natural and good for me in order to clear this anxiety I had, that I had all of these internal things wrong with me. And by doing the work around that later, I don't see a functional doctor anymore. I mean, I take good care of my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
But,
Thanks, Danielle.
yeah, well, that is part Danielle and part other things. But I have done enough work and, gone and done EMDR around it enough that if something comes up, if I feel like something is going on, I don't rush to fix it yesterday.
Yes. No,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
I agree. I'm not saying that you forget. I'm just saying that
it softens it.
Well, I think
Makes
you
it
just
manageable.
are stronger. It's kind of like going to the gym. Like, for example, my kid is 20 pounds now, right? So carrying 20-pound things for a long period of time is no longer hard.
Right.
Right. And we had my family over for Christmas and they have like a 10-month-old and little guy's like 12 pounds. And I can carry him. Yeah. This is awesome. Right. But when Rio was 12 pounds, I remember going, oh, and that's what I mean. Like, but you still have to hold a baby. Right. Like it's not like babies don't weigh anymore, or you get this magical power so you can lift them with your mind so your arms don't get tired. It's just that your arms are stronger or your back is stronger that you can carry the baby. So I'm not saying that. I guess what I'm trying to say is all the therapy and stuff like that you can take, it does help you manage it because it helps you become stronger mentally and emotionally. And that's great. And everybody needs to do that. And it doesn't take away just your general, like it just helps you manage the emotions that get brought up when the traumatic things happen again, to the point where, I used to cry when we'd go back to hospitals. Now I'm just like, okay. And I will there's a caveat about hospitals that comes later in the story, but we'll get to that. But yeah, generally speaking, even at this point in my life, I could understand that I was abnormal. I mean, all the other kids didn't have to worry about their heart conditions. They didn't have, monthly at the beginning, monthly, weekly doctor visits. They didn't have to sit out during soccer games because the ball could hit them in the chest and they would be a huge problem. Things like that, where you start understanding there's a separation in the way that my life is taken as a trajectory as far as the growth that I had to make. And I understood this even as a kid. I remember being, 7, 8 later on, because other things started happening, which leads us to number 2. But like, even at that point, I was already like, these kids don't know what pain is. Mm-hmm. They don't understand what it's like to hurt physically. And I did. And I don't know what that thought led to other than that, but I just could see the distinction in how I was different than people my age. So that's just part of it, and that was a result. Yeah. Any other questions about that before I tell you, before we go into the real traumatic stuff? That was just an appetizer. It was I'm
thinking, and here's what I'm thinking. I would like to devote an entire episode. So we'll have you back for part 2. I would like to devote an entire episode to the content that exists within your book.
Oh, yes.
I think that in and of itself is worthy of an entire episode, especially with what's going on in the world today. So why?
Yeah, it is topical.
Yes, very much so. So could you tell me then about your experiences with Rio, your daughter,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, and how, and I don't believe in coincidences, but and serendipitous just seems like such a happy word in this state, but, or in this, in this topic, but you experienced all of that as a child, and then you have a child of your own and have immense trauma that is, it's not the same, but it's definitely similar
hmm
to what you experienced as a child. Can you say more about that?
Like, let me tell you what happened with Rio.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of serendipitous, this is where, like, whether you believe in God or the universe, whatever, or just destiny or whatever the fuck, life is happening for you, not to you,
Mm-hmm.
even though sometimes it's shitty, is
Mhm.
basically the moral of this story.
I like it.
Yeah. So, my wife and I find out. Yeah, so other traumatic events happen. Move forward, fast forward, fast forward, fast forward.
We'll come back to those.
Life is threatened once again. Survive. No big deal. 2 for 2. And now I'm married, no kids. And my wife and I start trying for a baby. We get pregnant. It's fantastic. Now, I guess the only thing I can do, though, I've been telling the story more and more since Rhea was born. I think I'm getting better at it, but I tell it now with words of advice and where the advice comes from to justify it. So this is unsolicited advice for people who are listening. But let's just start with this. For context, my wife was so looking forward to, it was her dream to be able to have the baby at our house. She wanted a natural at-home birth in a tub in the room that the baby was going to like sleep in. She thought it was going to be this poetic moment of like just giving birth naturally. All her, some of her sisters, who she's the youngest of 6, and 3 of those sisters have kids, and some of them, if not most of them, had done at home births. It was Bree's dream to have this happen. And as we were getting closer to the due date, we started worrying about that because the baby was breached. And if people who are listening have no kids don't know what that means, it means that the baby's head was not pointing down towards the cervix. So that means that it's a problem because there's more complications when the baby isn't flipped. And I promise you this is all important. And my wife, if she probably should do her own episode to tell her side of the
I was
story.
actually going to suggest that.
But so I'll kind of sprinkle through this quickly. But the number one thing I would tell you guys to do is when you're getting ultrasounds done to check on your baby, have them done at a hospital that is specifically for babies, like an OB office, because there's places you could go get an ultrasound and they do ultrasounds for all sorts of shit, which is what we did. And at the time, hindsight's 2020, but at the time we're like, oh, these people know what the fuck they're doing. But we should have read the clues when some of the people who were very competent at their job, but they were like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. We don't get to do pregnancies that often. And you're like, oh, cool. Yeah, whatever. And they check for the general shit, but then they might miss some things, in which case they miss some things. One, Bree tried to get the baby flipped. I'll let her tell that part of the story because that's her story. But it got to a point where we couldn't get her flipped, so we had to finally go to the hospital. And the way that they do it is they give her the same epidural that they would give you when you're giving birth, so it doesn't hurt when they're pushing on your stomach to get the baby flipped. So then we could have the baby at home. So that's what we went in for the week before she was born, literally exactly 7 days. And when we were there, Dr. Allen let us know that she is the most badass person at doing this surgery or this flip. And she is like the one that handles the most extreme cases. And even she wouldn't touch Bree because Bree had, the reason she told us that was to preface the fact that she's not even going to attempt it, because Bree had what was called a succenturium placenta. And what that means is that you have she would call it a little purse, but that means that your placenta is a membrane and it keeps all the blood flow in for the baby and the mama and all that. We all know what a placenta does if you don't Google it. But there was outside the membrane through an artery, there was like a little mini placenta on the side. And if you try to flip a baby when that happens, it could highly potentially sever that artery and then the baby bleeds out. Oof. And then you lose the baby. And so we were told we can't and will not flip the baby. So therefore, you have to schedule a C-section and you're going to have this baby in the hospital because we're not going to deliver a breech and we're not going to flip it. So your choices are limited. And we were heartbroken. Bree was so sad because she could not fulfill her dream of giving birth to her baby at home. But again, hindsight's 2020, and there's no such thing as good things that happen to you, and there's no such things as bad things that happen to you. It's just fucking life, and you have to just understand it. And even though some people that are going through some real extreme trauma right now might look at me and scoff and tell me to go fuck off, I promise you that's the lesson I've learned, and hopefully you learn it too. That's my philosophy. I'm sticking with it. But why that was important is because then a week later, Bree's water breaks, and whatever, I can rush through this because these are like movie moments, but you get to the hospital, they're like, oh my God, the baby's coming. They try to do the things. And whatever. So yeah, there's more details to this part of it, but Bree can tell you all of that. And then the baby's born. They cut her open. She's born at 10:52 in the morning. It was awesome. I'm there. My wife's being cut open, and then the baby comes out, and I see my kid for the first time, and we're like, yes. Now, when you're pregnant, you know this. Everybody and their dog tells you the story of their first pregnancy and about how their kid was born. And every time it's like some sort of fun. Tom was at work and he wasn't answering his phone and I had to call my grandma or whatever. So all of the stories end at the same place where the baby's born. They wrap him in a blanket. They give him to you 48 hours later or so. You take your baby home. Happy life. And so I was waiting for them to hand me the baby. They hand me the baby. They give it to Bree. Bree looks at it. Bree's like halfway out of it because she's on all sorts of medication for the C-section. It's all Gucci. But then they take the baby back and they start doing all the measurements. How heavy is the baby? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at it from the side and I can see what they're doing. And they're working on Rio. And they look more and more frantic. They're shoving tubes in her mouth and shaking their head. And I'm just reading body language. I'm going, odd. It's okay. It's probably normal. I've never been here before. Who knows? And I'm waiting for them to wrap the baby up, give her to me. We go to our room in 48 hours. We get to go home. See you later. And they don't give me the baby. And they don't give me the baby. And they're not giving me the baby. They're not giving me the baby. And then finally a nurse comes up to me and she goes, you have to come with us. And I go, that is not how it happens when people tell me these stories. That's not how it happens in the movies. What the fuck is happening? And so they take baby and they take me to an auxiliary room where for 5 hours they work on Rio and have me standing there. She's holding my little finger because my voice and my hand is the only thing that calms her down enough for them to do all the poking and prodding and clean up with gauze of blood and shit to figure out what is wrong. The biggest thing that they're trying is they have a pretty good idea of what's happening, but they keep shoving these tubes down about the size of this headphone wire, and they shove it down her throat, and it wasn't going down far enough, and they didn't know why it wasn't going down far enough. There was a specific measurement. It has to be about 18 to 22 centimeters that it has to go down, and it was only going down 12 centimeters or millimeters, whatever. The point is, it was dead ending somewhere, and they had a pretty good idea of what it was, and it had to do with her esophagus. But when an esophagus is defective in a baby, there's 6 different ways it can be, and 4 of those are not good at all. And so as we were walking, now this is the whole time I'm just extremely calm, so much so that the doctors and nurses are like, are you in medicine? And I go, no. Well, they're like, what do you do? I go, I'm a stand-up comedian. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I go, I don't know what to tell you. They're like, why are you so calm? And I go, because I've been in hospitals a lot in my life. And because I know that freaking out isn't going to help. And I know that being dramatic isn't going to help. So I just need to do what I need to do. Now, what they don't know is that prior to this, as they're walking us to the auxiliary room, a very clear thought comes to my head, which is everything that's happened to me in my life, all of the time, I've never seriously questioned, why me? Now, there's always a thought in the back of your head going, what the hell? This seems to happen to me a lot, right? And I'm sure everybody can relate to that. But at that moment, life answered the question of why me? And it was because I had been entirely trained, directly or indirectly, to be able to handle extremely high stress situations with as much calm as I could possibly muster up to this point. And so when I'm walking over, I was a father when my daughter was born, or when my wife was pregnant, depending on what people believe. But I became a dad as I was walking to that auxiliary room, and I remember thinking, this is why. It's because I needed to learn how to get my shit together when my daughter needed me. Because I have a daughter now, and my daughter needs her dad, and her dad needs to be calm for this to go as best as possible. And so after a long time, it's weird, the things that they tell you, or that you can't really prepare for these things. Even though my wife and I had talked about what would happen if like there was complications at the birth. We had actually talked about this, and that also helped. But it's weird when it's actually happening, because like we had a nurse come, Katie, bless her heart, and they have to put in a PICU on the baby. Now, baby's arteries and veins are too small for an IV, so they have to like go through a main artery in their arm or up their leg in order to be able to like give them fluids and stuff through an IV for both pain medication, and to be able to get the official diagnosis of what's going on. They need to do an X-ray. I think I saw Rio get like 30 X-rays in the first 4 hours of her life. And they need to put in a dye to go down through her system so they can actually officially give the diagnosis of exactly which of the different kinds of esophageal problems it was. What ended up happening is that Rio had a tracheoesophageal fistula, and the way that it worked is that your trachea goes down your throat, and it splits into two main channels into one of your lungs. So that's what you get air in and out. When you choke, it's because a little bit of liquid or fluid goes down your trachea, and you have to like cough it out. That's what, like when you choke on water or something like. Then the other tube is your esophagus. There's only two tubes. There's the trachea, which is to your lungs, and your esophagus, which goes directly to your stomach. There's a flap that opens and lets the food go down one way, not the other way. And then the food goes down to your stomach, and then it goes all the way through, and it turns into shit, right?
Thank you for clarifying that.
The biology lesson for you.
Okay, thank you.
So what happened with Rio is that both of those tubes were just fine coming out of her mouth, like the back of her mouth. But then as they were going down, her esophagus, dead-ended halfway through. It just stopped. It was plugged. Like, it never grew. And then the part of it that would continue down to her stomach, instead of being connected to the dead end part, it was connected to the trachea. In other words, it was like a third little vessel, and her stomach de facto became a third lung, essentially, right? So the trachea was coming down, had its two branches, and then it had a little third branch, which was the esophagus. It just got attached to that. It's hard to explain just by talking about it, but hopefully I'm painting a clear enough picture.
I mean, I understand. If I can understand it, anybody can understand.
Well, and the reason I'm saying is because what that meant is she could still breathe, which was huge, because sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes the trachea is attached or detached, and then the baby can't breathe, and then they lose the baby. And I think that's what happened to Lindsay.
That was Lindsay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which, if you haven't heard that episode, highly recommend it. Go back to listen to that. But, and again, it's a luck thing, because for us, it turned out that the baby could breathe just fine, but she could not eat, which is problematic. It was back, 50 years ago, she's dead because she can't eat. So you have to just like watch her go, because you can't feed her. She can't get nutrition. And so she's dead. And so it took 5 hours for that. But in order for them to do that, there's a point where they had to like get me to get to put in a PICU, have to sign that it's okay if she dies. Because it's not an uncommon thing. Every baby that's ever been in the NICU gets a PIC line done, but there could be complications, and then the hospital can't be liable for it. So they have to have you sign that if they, and so it was just like a crazy experience to just be like, I'm signing this. I have a signature. I've signed checks with it. I've signed contracts with it. I've also signed fucking receipts at a restaurant with it. Like, this is the same signature that I've used to sign at a, buying, Cheetos at a gas station. And I'm using the same signature to say, if my baby dies, it's not your fault. It was surreal to think about how different the life can be with the same exact motion or situation. Meanwhile, my wife's like in surgery, or coming out of major surgery. So they have her across the hall, and I'm hopping back and forth trying to explain to her what was happening at the same time as I'm learning it. And it was rough. Rio had to get surgery immediately the next day. The surgeon came up to us and he told us what was going to happen, and everything I just explained, but with visuals. And, generally the surgery is pretty successful. It's complicated, but it's generally pretty successful at the hospital that we were in. And this is where I'm talking about how there's no good, there's no bad. We were so heartbroken from not being able to have the baby at home. But if we had had the baby at home, we would have not known about that, and we would have had major problems. Yep. And so at the end of the day, the fact that she was breached is what saved her life in a lot of ways, right? Yep. But we were so heartbroken about it. So this is what I mean, where you never know when things are good and when things are bad. At the time, they're unpleasant. I can't change that for you. Or they're really pleasant, but they're not good and they're not bad. Mm-hmm. They just happened. And you have to be able to look at it somehow as best as you can that way, because if they happened, then that means that there's something else that's going to happen. And how you get to that point is entirely your choice. As hard as it can be, it's still your choice. Rio comes out of surgery, and oh man, there's so much more traumatic shit that happens. I mean, just that day was traumatic, but then the NICU itself is a very traumatic place. I'll briefly mention some of these things and then we can go into detail. I know we're going past the time, so sorry for
it's all right.
For the hour. Okay, so the baby comes out of surgery. She goes into the NICU. Now, there's a couple of things that are complicated when you have a baby in the NICU. There was 49 babies in the NICU at that time, 25 of which were preemies. Now, not to belittle any parent who's in the NICU's experience, but if you have a preemie, that is amazing, because really what that means is they just have to keep the baby going on fluids and feed the baby. And generally speaking, you just wait a little bit, the baby gets old enough to go, and then you deal with some of the complications that can happen. But the baby itself is intact as far as health goes. It just was born a little early, unless there's other complications. But again, generally, you just wait and then you can go. The baby has to weigh enough for you to leave. And then there's the other half where we were. And that side is a dark, heavy place. And I have to say at this point, people who work at the NICU, nurses and doctors, are insane as far as their ability to just show up to work every day, despite the traumatic experiences that you see, because babies die. And it's incredible that you could just get up and go to work the next day and just keep going. I have so much respect for NICU nurses that I could never thank them enough for everything that they did for my family, and the way that they handled the care of my kid with so much poise and professionalism cannot be overstated. So when Rio comes out of the NICU, you're looking down at this peanut of a human, and she's got cables like I did. She's got tubes going into her like I did. And it was a very strange situation. At this point, I'd already called my parents, and I'm like, oh my God, I know what you went through. I know how it feels to be in your shoes of this. And they told me how proud they were of me. And they told me that if it was to happen to anybody, that they're glad it happened. Like, not glad, but they're proud that it happened to me, because of anybody in our family, I was probably the most equipped to deal with it, because I could sympathize with her more than anybody else, and that it was going to be okay, and that to just keep this in mind and just to stay positive, just like they always had done. When the baby cried, she had a breathing tube in because her trachea had to get cut, right? And then the tube that was her esophagus had to get cut, and then that got connected to the correct piece, essentially, to make it two distinct tubes. And so seeing her with all the cables was pretty tough. We couldn't hold her for 3 weeks until she got the breathing tube out, because you can't move the breathing tube. So for 3 weeks, my wife couldn't hold her baby, which felt like a lifetime. There were complications. Again, I could talk about for this for hours. I could do a whole episode just on this, but you learn about traumatic stress. You learn about the politics of a hospital, where the NICU doctor says this is what you should do. The nurse says this is what you should do. The surgery department says this is what you should do. Ear, nose, and throat doctors say this is what you should do. And none of those four opinions
Are the same.
are the same. And they did discuss this prior to coming to talk to us. And now we're supposed to make a decision based on what 4 different people are saying to go in 4 different directions, or at least, a few similar directions. So that was also stressful. But then also the experience of being there. We were in a quad, so there was 4 other babies in the same big room that we were in. The baby across from us directly, like facing Rio, had heart complications, and they had gone in for like the 3rd heart surgery at this point. Couldn't imagine doing 3 surgeries. We went through 1, and that was insane. The baby diagonally from us, she did not make it.
Oh.
Was born with heart problems, and her brain was too big. And so many surgeries, so complicated. The baby did not make it.
So you're not only carrying the trauma of your own experience, but
we're
you're
sharing
watching,
with these other parents.
Yeah, you're watching and sharing which
like
adds to it, I'm sure.
I mean, this last one is probably the most. I'd saved it for last because the baby next to Rio, he was born with all his guts outside of his body.
Oof.
And so the way that you fix that is you cut a hole down above the belly button, like just below the sternum. And it's a significant hole. And then they have to lay the baby on his back, and they put his guts in like this little like tube, kind of like a small mini Pringles can or something. And it's clear, it's see-through. And as the baby grows and makes more room for the guts, the gravity starts pushing it down and down and down and down and down until all the guts are in there. And then he has to have another surgery to have them rearranged as best as possible how they're supposed to go. And then they seal him up, and then he heals. And hopefully, everything turned out okay, and then they get to go home. But to come into a place, care about your kid, and you just look like you look up, and you just see baby's guts like 10 feet from you. It literally looked like Saving Private Ryan, but without the bullets and the fire. It was just
and again,
they're babies. They're babies. You're seeing this on a
trauma.
child.
Yeah,
on a child.
Trauma. Extra
on top
trauma.
of all the stress that we'd already been going through. And I remember thinking to myself, how does this like even happen? Like it's and again, it's all about choice of how you, attitude is just perspective. It's just another word. I don't like using the word attitude. I like to use the word perspective, and good perspective is different than because people, when you think of good attitude, they think that you have to be positive all the fucking time. That's not true. And that's unrealistic. And that's actually toxic. Don't do that shit. Having good perspective does not mean you are positive. It means that you choose the best way to look at things as possible. Is that traumatic? Absolutely. Nobody's denying that. We're talking about it right now. And on the other hand, I was thinking, man, like these babies would have all been dead 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we're even in this floor and these babies are alive is a miracle. Like it is the fact that someone can operate on a baby like this, like on the size of a tiny little human, and avoid all these like tiny little arteries, and incredible skill and advancement in medicine. And I was so thankful that was happening, that these parents could have their kids be able to walk out of there. I'm not saying that that's how you deal with the trauma. I'm just saying that that's how I just chose to look at it. And it for me, it was not that it was helpful. That's just the choice that I made.
There's always an and, right?
Yeah.
There's always an and.
Yeah. So as Rio starts developing, some other complications kind of rise and show up, and scares. Again, Bree can probably tell you about some of those, but at one point they tell us that the only way that we can have her go home earlier is if we put in a G tube, which is basically like a little hole that looks like a little balloon thing where you inflate when you fit like a beach ball, like the little thing that pops up and you put your lips on it and blow it up. It looks like that, and it's a hole directly to her stomach. So they take her stomach, they pin it to the edge of her skin on the other side, and then the tube goes in, and you feed her through there because she had esophageal problems. So she can't eat. She hasn't been able to breastfeed whatsoever this whole time, and she can't eat down her throat because it's healing. So we have to feed her milk that's been frozen and warmed up that Bree's producing because she's making milk and she's pumping, and we have to feed it directly through her G tube.
Yeah, I think my dad had one of those when he had throat cancer. And
so you have to feed yourself elsewhere.
Yeah. And I think, that's the same thing as an adult, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all
the same.
Called G tubes, right?
Yeah. Gastrointestinal tubes is what they're short for. But we were able to take her home, and then for the instructions were that we had to feed her every 3 hours. Now, to clean everything up before you feed her and then after you feed her, a feeding took about an hour and a half. So around the clock, midnight, 3 a.m., 6 a.m., 9 a.m., noons, 3, 6, 9, right? Around the clock was when we were supposed to feed her. We had to start getting prepped at 2:30 for the 3 o'clock feed. That would get down to about 3:30, almost 4 o'clock, depending on how much she was crying. The problem was that if the baby cries, because it's all gravity. So if she cries, there's pressure and food comes back out of her stomach through the tube and into the syringe.
No.
And so you had to like keep her calm as you were feeding her, and you can't feed her too fast because then her stomach gets too full and then she throws up, which could damage the esophagus. So it was a science of like letting the syringe go and gravity take it. And we had to like with our hands, like choke it. So it would go in slowly and then give her like another 5 milliliters out of the 80. We're supposed to give her 80. And then on the other hand, I'm holding her with my other arm to make sure she doesn't cry. And she wouldn't, she would always calm down when I would go walk up and down the stairs. So in the night shift, I took the night shift. And so I would walk her up and down the stairs at 3 a.m, feeding her and singing to her so she wouldn't cry until the feeding was done. And we did that for like another 2 months after being in the NICU for like 5 weeks. Oh no, for like another month after being in the NICU for like 5 weeks. I'll let my wife tell this other part, but there was a moment 2 weeks after we came home, my mother-in-law passes away. And so again, that's more a brief story. So I'll let her talk about that. But blessings, right? Because Brie was able to go see her mom because I could feed the baby. And normally that wouldn't happen because she's breastfeeding, but because I have milk and I can feed her through the G tube, I didn't need Brie there. Now it was tough. I think I got like 9 hours of sleep. I think I counted, it was like 108 hours that Brie was gone, and I got 9 hours of sleep that whole time. By the time Brie came home, I was like a zombie, and she was, dealing
the things they don't tell you about
parenting.
You are,
and I'm saying this right now more so that when Rio is older and she goes, "You've never done anything for me," I can be like, "Bitch, listen, you go listen to this episode of Trauma Uncensored, and you tell me I've done nothing for you." I didn't mean to call my daughter a bitch. I'm just saying.
I was gonna say
I'm a comedian, so I had to.
That's right.
I handle things with humor. But anyway, so long story short is those were some like the moments that I remember thinking, holy fuck, like this is crazy that this is happening. Like I can't imagine it any other way because this is just the cards that we were dealt, but I can't let go of the fact that this is crazy. I mean, it's healthy to acknowledge this is not normal. This is crazy that this is happening. And so I guess I'll close with this is when I'm talking about perspective, there was a moment where they thought she had Hirschsprungs. I'm not going to go into the details of that because it's long, but long story short is she wasn't pooping and we needed her to poop because when things happen with the esophagus or your gastrointestinal digestive system, they take it as the moment the food leaves your mouth to the moment it leaves your body. So sometimes it's a syndrome and other problems can pop up throughout the whole process. And because she wasn't pooping, they're like, oh crap, is there something wrong with her, intestines? Is there something wrong with her colon? That there could be a surgery that we need to do that we didn't catch because we were worried about the esophagus. And I remember there was a point where in the NICU and I prayed and I remember thinking, God, if you make this baby poop, I will never complain about a poopy diaper ever in my life. Like I will embrace poop. We will celebrate poops in this family.
Held that part?
That's what I'm saying. So she finally pooped and I was like, got it. We're potty training right now.
Oh yeah.
And so
fun.
It's a lot of fun. And every time she poops, we celebrate like she's won the Super Bowl. When I poop, we celebrate like when the dogs poop, we celebrate like they won the Super Bowl. Like we cheer for poops. And our family celebrates poops. And it's really funny because, I just want to talk about perspective is I had other friends that were having babies. And, every once in a while you're like, oh, I had to change a blowout. And I'm like, brother, you got to change a blowout. You didn't have to. You got the chance to do so because you have a healthy baby.
Wait until she's like almost 5 years old, decides to swallow a penny because she's trying to hide it from someone. So she thinks, oh, let's just swallow the penny because then nobody will be able to find it.
Yeah.
And then you're on that poop duty for days until it passes.
Until she gets the penny out.
That's a fun experience.
Yeah, I imagine. So I don't know. It's just those little things where you start thinking to yourself like, wow. And then other little moments that you think of happening. I remember telling Brie one time, I'm like, someday we're gonna be hanging out the house and she's gonna be playing with the dogs and they're going to tickle her and she's going to laugh. And like the first time that happened, I'm like, man, I'm living on dreams and answered
Andrea
prayers.
sent me a photo of her the other day, and she's, walking, and I wish we had that photo. She's just such an amazing.
Yeah.
She's going to be on here someday too, and I'm going to, whenever she's like 5.
Her trauma is going to be having me as a dad.
That's
isn't that all our
typically
trauma?
how everybody's works. Yes.
But I guess in closing and in perspective, unless you have questions, but I was bred to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. And that is such a valuable way of looking at it, because
I guess
I have allowed myself over the years and over the work to be able to say everything that has happened is leading me to where I'm supposed to be, right? I look at what I'm doing today, and it was very hard for me to walk away from everything I worked for to be a professor. I had made I was tenured, I had made associate, I had plans to go on to, be full professor. I loved what I did. I loved my students, and it broke my heart to actually walk away. Now, you want to talk about trauma? We could talk about, politics and higher academia, but that's another episode. But it's, it was very hard for me to leave. And there's absolutely no way I could have been prepared to do what I'm doing now, without having the experience of, and even when we were running Living for Logan, the nonprofit organization, fighting distracted driving, I was up in front of legislation and the media and all sorts of things, speaking our story. And I could, because I'd had so much practice being in front of people, speaking all of the time. And, I think if people would allow themselves to have that and moment, this happened to me, and later, what could it be setting me up for? What kind of, experience could this possibly lead for in the future? And it may not be positive. Yours was your own medical trauma, and then it led to, then your daughter had her own medical trauma, and take what the people said in the hospital, take what your parents said, there's obviously a reason, and you were prepared for it.
Yeah.
Why me? Why not me?
Yeah. So I guess what I would say, is that when Rio was in the hospital for 5 weeks, the hospital became my favorite place. And I loved going to hospitals.
Now.
Yeah. Because she was there, and that's where she was, and that's where I got to see her. And I can't imagine a different way of our story going and her story going, because ours is the one that was that way. And there's no people go, do you wish you had been? No, I don't wish that it had been different. I wish that she didn't have to go through so much pain, because this is not the kind of pain that she'll remember, and this isn't the kind of pain that she will learn from, because there was no memory being made. So that's the only thing that I think of all of it I wish was a little differently. I learned to love to go to hospitals.
What a change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is your experience. It is your story, and you're choosing to walk alongside both the pain and the trauma of it, and life and joy and purpose that has come out of it. They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that goes for anybody. That goes for 2016 Brooke, and for 1998 Andres. It's And for 2026, Brooke, and 2026, Andres, it's okay. It's not okay right now. It will be okay later.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you'll love even to go to a hospital, So
Well,
it'll be okay.
I'll love going to I'm not sure I'm going to love going to a hospital, but maybe tolerate it.
There
Maybe
you go.
tolerate
That's
it
fair
more.
enough.
Unless I'm volunteering.
Food still sucks.
Yeah, well, that's fair. That's fair. Man, this has been an excellent episode. We covered quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cut this down. I'm not going to cut it. We're going to
That's
post
fine.
the hour and a half.
That's fine.
And I am
Stay tuned for more trauma.
That's well, I do. The other story, the other main trauma that you have to share about your family in Colombia and the experiences there. And I can't even imagine the death threats that forced you out of the country. That is, and which led to your book as well. I am very excited to sit down and have you share that in complete detail as well. So the goals now are for Bree to come. I mean, as a mother,
her side is a whole different side.
And that's and that's going to be a thing too, because as parents, you with her having carried the baby and with her, I can only sit here and think of some of the things she must have told herself, the stories she must have told herself about the situation and her involvement in it, And,
you have no idea.
Not just the stories, but the lies that her brain told herself.
Oh, you have no idea. There was a lot of times she blamed herself for the effective. You should talk. Yeah, it's better if she does it on her own. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's good. And so, all right, so we'll wrap this one up, and we will plan to see you yet again. And of course, those aren't going to be the only episodes. I do very much enjoy having you on, and
it's a lot of fun.
It is.
You're good at your thing. You're good at this thing.
Oh, thanks.
Doing great.
So are you.
Proud of you.
So, yeah, and for those interested in hopping on and sharing in the fun. Not that trauma is necessarily fun, but
so fun.
That's right. Helping others. These conversations are very, very beneficial to others out there who, especially those who don't feel like they may be ready to share their story, but it provides an opportunity to give them a safe space to understand that they're not alone. And so if there's anybody, or if you're out there and you're listening and you would love to share your story in hopes of, providing that space for others, please definitely email us at hello@traumauncensored.com. Andreas, love you, man.
A pleasure it was, Brooke.
Listeners, love all of you as well. We will see everybody on the next episode of Trauma Uncensored.
Bye-bye.
Bye.